In the opulent halls of St. Andrew's School in Potomac, Maryland, a world of privilege and high expectations unfolded daily. The school, known for its distinguished alumni and rigorous academic standards, provided an environment where ambition thrived. IT was not just an educational institution. It was a breeding ground for the upper echelons of society. Students walked through marble-clad corridors, their laughter mingling with the scent of luxury, felt in every tailored blazer and the latest trend in footwear. Here, wealth wasn't merely a backdrop. It shaped friendships and rivalries. Among these students was Barron Trump, a quiet figure often overshadowed by the grandeur of his family name. Despite being part of this elite circle, he operated somewhat apart from it all. While his classmates flaunted their designer gear and boasted about lavish vacations, Barron preferred a more understated existence, that he found solace in his studies and sports, often retreating into the comforting realm of books or onto the soccer field, where he excelled unnoticed amidst the glittering surface of teenage social hierarchy. Yet, all around him bubbled a culture steeped in competition, not just academically, but socially as well. As he navigated this environment, Barron was acutely aware of the perceptions that accompanied his name. The Trump brand evoked a spectrum of emotions. Admiration and envy intertwined seamlessly. His father's success brought with it a weighty legacy that often felt burdensome to his young shoulders. Classmates didn't hold back in their commentary. They were quick to offer opinions about Donald Trump's political maneuvers or business dealings, framing their judgments based on headlines rather than personal knowledge. Barron found himself at a crossroads, unsure how to react when faced with jibes that pieced together his identity with that of his father's public persona. St. Andrews was undeniably beautiful. Manicured lawns stretched out like emerald, carpets under expansive skies. The buildings resonated with history, adorned with intricate stonework and sophisticated architecture. However, beneath this veneer of elegance lay an intricate labyrinth of social intricacies where wealth dictated interactions. Lunch hours turned into exhibitions of affluence as students displayed their expensive tastes. Artfully arranged sushi platters shared among friends and conversations peppered with names like Gucci and Prada, the subtle hierarchy was palpable. It was a game governed by social status, where faux pas could reverberate far beyond a lunchroom. That on this particular day, as autumn leaves began to scatter across campus grounds, Barron sat at a table with a small group, his true friends who embraced him for who he was rather than what his last name represented. Nearby, clusters of students reveled in their own conversations. Among them was Ethan, a classmate whose polished appearance and wealth positioned him firmly at the top of the social ladder. Ethan exuded an air of confidence mixed with arrogance, traits that often translated into belittling remarks aimed at those he deemed lesser. He had always prided himself on being the foremost authority on what made someone cool, often using his family's wealth as a prop to elevate his standing. As lunchtime progressed, laughter erupted from Ethan's table when he threw out a comment after glancing at Barron's direction that it dripped with sarcasm and mockery, casting aspersions on Donald Trump's most recent political controversy. The laughter intensified around him as Ethan unleashed a calculated insult, one crafted to diminish both Barron's character and family legacy in one fell swoop. Barron instinctively shrank back into himself. The familiar sting of embarrassment washed over him. The air grew thick with tension. Everyone at the table held their breath, waiting to see how he would respond to Ethan's provocation. There was an unspoken understanding among students. Insults could circulate freely in this privileged world, yet retaliation carried its own weight. A risk that could shift one's standing dramatically. The scene formed a stark contrast between Barron's quiet demeanor and the vocal bravado of his peers. With heart racing, he found himself caught in an internal battle. Should he succumb to humiliation or defend himself against the tide of laughter? This microcosm reflected the inner workings of adolescent life among the affluent. It was not merely about insensitivity, but rather the perpetual game of maintaining status amidst swirling social currents. In this moment, while sitting at that lavishly set table, filled with uneaten gourmet offerings, Barron realized something fundamental. He was not just fighting against an insult. He was wrestling with his own identity within a legacy intertwined with public scrutiny. How could he reconcile being his own person while navigating an environment laden with expectations? As this realization loomed over him like a heavy cloud, Barron's resolve began to solidify, igniting an urge to confront not only Ethan, but also what it meant to stand up for oneself amidst privilege's pressures. The stage was set for a confrontation that would ripple through both their lives. A moment that would challenge preconceived notions about wealth and reputation and raise questions about loyalty and self-respect in the unforgiving arena of adolescence. A.S. lunch continued in the bustling cafeteria of St. Andrew's School. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and energetic chatter. Students filled the ornate dining hall, sunlight pouring through large windows, illuminating the walls adorned with achievements and trophies that spoke of academic and athletic prowess. IT was a space where social dynamics played out in real time, a stage set for hierarchies to unfold. Seated at a table, nestled in a corner, Barron felt the familiar pressure of being part of this elite world. He was surrounded by his closest friends, fellow students who appreciated him for more than just his last name. They were immersed in friendly banter while sharing stories about schoolwork and weekend plans. That IT was one of those rare moments when Barron could escape the weight of expectations that clung to him like a second skin. However, across the room, Barron's tranquility was short-lived. Ethan, the classmate, who epitomized privilege, caught sight of him and leaned closer to his circle of friends. With an exaggerated whisper loud enough for several tables to hear, he smirked and launched into his scripted routine of mockery. "Hey, have you guys heard about Barron's dad? Seems like he can't keep his foot out of his mouth these days," Ethan quipped, eliciting a wave of laughter from his entourage. The comment hit Barron like a slap across the face. He glanced over at Ethan's table, where several heads turned toward him with sneers dancing on their lips. To them, it was all just entertainment. Another chance to assert dominance over someone they deemed vulnerable. Yet to Barron, it felt like an assault on his very identity. It wasn't just an insult aimed at his father, but an attack on everything he represented. He could feel heat rising in his cheeks as embarrassment flooded him. "Why do you care so much about what my dad says?" Barron muttered under his breath, words intended for himself but loud enough for those nearby to catch them. Ethan seemed unfazed by Barron's deflection. Instead, he seized the moment to amplify the ridicule. "Oh, come on. You're really going to defend him now? You know nobody takes a guy seriously anymore." He shot back with mock bravado. The laughter around him swelled again. It was infectious and relentless. Barron's heart raced as he weighed his options. Should he let it slide or stand up for himself? The teasing would surely continue if he didn't respond. However, engaging could escalate things further than intended among a crowd that thrived on boldness and bravado. Just then, memories flashed through Barron's mind. The countless times he'd witnessed discussions about public figures devolve into petty insults at school functions or family gatherings where respect seemed lost amid personal bias. Each disparaging remark about his father had left its mark on him, reminders that greatness came intertwined with scrutiny, and scrutiny fostered disdain. As laughter echoed around him, Barron's internal struggle intensified. The dining hall became a microcosm of wealth and power imbalance. Here lay stark contrast between confidence infused with entitlement and quiet resilience veiled by insecurity. Suddenly feeling confrontational yet vulnerable, he decided enough was enough, that he couldn't allow Ethan's words to define him any longer or dictate how others perceived him. With newfound determination coursing through his veins, Barron stood up abruptly from the table, but not without hesitation lingering in each step forward. All eyes turned toward him as silence fell over the cacophony of laughter. Even whispers ceased momentarily in surprise at this unexpected turn. "Maybe if you spent less time talking about my dad and more time figuring out why your opinions make you look small," he retorted sharply, surprising even himself with the strength behind those words. The room's atmosphere shifted palpably as students processed what they had just witnessed. A quiet boy standing up against someone perched atop their social pedestal. a confrontation unfolding before them that flipped expectations upside down. For a heartbeat suspended in time, there was no laughter echoing back. Only shocked expressions stared back at him. From awestruck classmates taken aback by Barron's response to stunned peers acknowledging a rare glimpse into vulnerability masked by swagger. Yet relief quickly morphed into apprehension as uncertainty crept in again. Had he gone too far? What consequences might await him after this momentary surge of courage? Anxiety gnawed at him as Ethan's expression hardened into something less. Playful, a shadow-darkening arrogance meant solely for sport now morphing into something far more serious. Ethan seemed poised to react when suddenly flickers of regret washed over Barron. Doubt intruded upon clarity. Perhaps confronting someone like Ethan only deepened rifts rather than resolved differences within this tightly knit social fabric known so well among their peers. In that fleeting instant between utterance and retaliation lies in ever-deepening significance, standing up against taunts. Stem not only from personal defense, but also examine broader concepts surrounding identity amidst pressures faced daily within these hallowed halls. A poignant reminder that confronting conflict often stirred complicated emotions surfacing beneath layers built around wealth and reputation. Ultimately left hanging in tense air laden with potential repercussions stood Barron Trump, once feeling unmoored, yet perhaps finally charting paths towards self-discovery amid realities wrapped intricately. Within adolescent life, governed not only by status but also unyielding competition amongst youth shaping futures ahead. Silence engulfed the cafeteria as Barron's words hung in the air, a stark contrast to the previous laughter that had filled the room. His heart raced, a mixture of adrenaline and anxiety coursing through him. He had never intended to become part of such a high-stakes drama. Yet here he stood, defiant and exposed. The gaze of his peers was both exhilarating and terrifying. This moment could alter everything. Ethan's expression shifted, disbelief flickering across his face before he masked it with an attempt at indignant bravado. "What did you just say?" he asked, feigning incredulity as he leaned back slightly, arms crossed. The confidence that had radiated from him moments earlier began to crack like ice under scrutiny. "The truth," Barron replied, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. Despite the knots in his stomach, he felt an unexpected surge of empowerment. Perhaps it was the cumulative effect of years of being overshadowed by his father's persona, or perhaps it was simply time to carve out an identity of his own, one not solely defined by who his father was. Around them, students began to murmur softly, shifting in their seats. Some leaned closer, eager for a front-row seat to this unexpected showdown, while others remained stiff with discomfort at witnessing such raw confrontation. Barron could feel the tension rising again. They were no longer just passive observers but participants in a social experiment unfolding live before them. For every action comes reaction. Ethan was not about to let Barron's retort slide easily. "Listen, Barron," he drew out each syllable as if weighing their significance. "Not everyone can be famous just because their dad is a talking point on Twitter." Laughter rippled through Ethan's friends once more, a chorus echoing familiarity that stung Barron deeper than before. Yet something had shifted within him. As Ethan spoke, Barron sensed that winning these exchanges didn't always come from playing it safe or remaining silent. Instead, standing firm, even against ridicule, offered its own kind of strength. He inhaled deeply and decided to lean into this newfound resolve rather than retreating back into insecurity. "Maybe I don't want to be famous for being your joke," Barron shot back with newfound assertiveness, his cheeks flushing with both intensity and pride. "It's funny how some people hide behind insults when they have nothing valuable to contribute." The cafeteria fell silent yet again, but for a different reason this time. Surprised glances exchanged among classmates reflected admiration intertwined with apprehension. Many recognized that this wasn't merely an exchange between two boys. It transcended personal conflict and tapped into issues of self-worth and integrity in an environment where such traits often went unnoticed amid the glittering facades. For brief moments suspended in time, Barron felt liberated from labels imposed upon him, not only from being Donald Trump's son, but also for being someone residing beneath the shadow cast by wealth and expectations. Each word felt like armor, shielding him against further assault while simultaneously empowering him to confront what lay ahead. Before Ethan could respond with another retort aimed at undermining Barron further, a flicker of doubt crossed his features, a hint that perhaps this wasn't as easy or amusing as he'd anticipated. The laughter diminished while murmurs transformed into contemplative whispers amongst students who suddenly reconsidered their loyalties within these shifting dynamics. In that instant of collective hesitation lay potential transformation. Barriers between social strata seemed thinner than ever before. Amidst Barron's rising courage juxtaposed against Ethan's wavering confidence, it became clear status did not solely define someone's worth. Action spoke volumes too. However, despite feeling victorious in this momentary exchange, a fleeting glimpse into empowerment, doubt still lurked within Barron's mind like dark clouds threatening rain after a sunny day. Would standing up for himself lead only to further ridicule? Was it worth risking relationships forged over shared experiences among peers? If sensing his apprehensions swirling beneath bravado, one friend from Barron's table reached out to nudge him lightly with encouragement, as if silently conveying solidarity amidst uncertainty pervading waves of judgment around them. But instead of allowing fear to fester any longer, he stood tall, gathering resolve within himself that echoed louder than any taunts leveled against him thus far. "You can mock me all you want," he declared boldly, now addressing everyone surrounding them. Not just Ethan alone, but rather speaking directly toward those who had watched silently until then. Words only hold power if we let them shape us into someone else. His voice remained steady, a mixture of youthful defiance tempered by wisdom gained through years spent navigating complexities tied intricately within privilege tangled with public perception. Suddenly realizing something transformative took place beyond simple bravado. They were embarking on uncharted territory together where vulnerability met authenticity. A call for recognition resonating among youth craving depth rather than mere surface relationships built upon wealth alone. Ethan faltered, visibly now, the power dynamic shifting ever so slightly as realization dawned. This was not merely about insults or ridicule anymore. It reflected deeper struggles prevalent within adolescent life itself. Questions surrounding loyalty versus authenticity resonating loudly amidst reflections cast across marble tables encircling them. And while consequences loomed ahead yet unseen, the uncertainty simmering beneath every gaze pinned upon him, Barron felt lighter, somehow stepping away from constraints. Tethered tightly around identity, defined solely by expectations placed upon him, previously becoming something more meaningful. His own voice threading through complex narratives unfolding around them, all within hallowed halls reverberating stories untold, waiting patiently for courage needed ignite change forward towards understanding shared experiences, transcending wealth enshrined above all else beneath shimmering chandeliers, illuminating paths unknown ahead, yet fiercely brighter empowered. Lives awaiting discovery all together, moving forward united beyond labels, once cloaked tightly around past identities, waiting released finally, embraced fully ahead, toward tomorrow, unbound entirely anew. The moment hung in the air, charged with anticipation and unspoken tension, as the cafeteria buzzed with the aftershocks of Barron's bold retort. Ethan's face twisted into a mask of disbelief and anger, quickly morphing into something darker, an unsettling blend of indignation and contempt for someone so accustomed to being the center of attention. Barron had dared to challenge the very foundation of Ethan's social standing, and the repercussions were likely to be swift. Without missing a beat, Ethan seized the opportunity to retaliate. "Look at you, Barron. Who do you think you are?" He leaned forward, eyes narrowing with disdain as he gestured dismissively, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just because your dad has a Twitter account doesn't mean you can suddenly pretend to be relevant, that you're nothing more than a punchline in his act. The words cut deep as they echoed throughout the dining hall. Ethan's friends erupted into laughter, fueling his bravado while drawing more eyes toward Barron to them. It was entertainment, a spectacle to be enjoyed at one another's expense, reinforcing the cruel social hierarchies that governed their lives. For Barron, the insult was a visceral attack, not just on him, but on his entire identity. It felt as though someone had yanked the rug from beneath his feet, leaving him teetering dangerously on the precipice of humiliation. He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks again, embarrassment mixing with a simmering rage as he fought to maintain his composure amidst the laughter and jeers that surrounded him. In that moment, memories flooded his mind. Past encounters where he had been forced to swallow insults about his family, each one a reminder of how easily perceptions were shaped by external factors outside his control. Being Donald Trump's son had never been an easy mantle to wear. It was a double-edged sword that cut both ways. As much as he longed for independence, society was quick to reduce him to that singular identity, always judging and rarely understanding. Why do you care about what my dad says? Isn't your life supposed to be so much better than mine, just because of your money? Barron finally shot back, emboldened by an electric resolve that flickered within him. The moment felt surreal. It was as if layers were peeling away from his existence piece by piece. Self-doubt began eroding in the wake of defiance. Ethan's smirk faltered momentarily before he regained himself. "Oh, please, just accept it. You're riding on someone else's coattails," he retorted fiercely, but without the same conviction as before. Realizing he had struck a nerve and seeing how some students in the room seemed uncertain whether to join in Ethan's laughter or support Barron, a shift began unfolding. It was as if an invisible thread connected those watching. They understood that this encounter transcended mere sarcasm or rivalry. It addressed themes of authenticity and self-worth that resonated deeply among their ranks. Yet there was a creeping shadow forming over Barron's victory as doubt clawed at his mind, like a persistent itch. Would this confrontation put him further at odds with Ethan and his followers? Did standing up for himself mean signing up for further ridicule later on? Those questions continued swirling like dark clouds overhead, even while he stood tall. If sensing Barron's internal conflict resurfacing amidst the tension within him, one friend from the table next door called out softly yet encouragingly, "You're not just a joke, Barron, you're way more than that." Those words punctuated the air like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, giving him more strength to resist being swept away by the storm of this moment. "Words are powerful, Ethan," Barron stated firmly once again, allowing conviction to seep into his voice. "But we decide how much power we give them. I'm tired of being made fun of because of who I am related to." Each word felt lighter as they flowed from him. He was rediscovering parts of himself long buried under layers of societal expectations. Ethan's expression shifted from defiance to discomfort, a flicker of recognition revealing itself amid confusion, clouding arrogance, now fading into uncertainty. Laughter began to wane as murmurs filled the space. Classmates exchanged glances contemplating loyalties forged within moments where indifference often ruled supreme. To Barron's surprise, it wasn't just about retaliation anymore. It became about connection amid vulnerability layered within adolescence itself, an acknowledgement shared among youth desperately seeking validation beyond outward appearances alone. The shift in power dynamics illuminated possibilities previously unseen within their social structure. Perhaps standing up together could open pathways toward understanding rather than division among those residing beneath glittering facades, veiling insecurities lurking just beneath polished surfaces. Tension lingered thick in the air, surrounding them all at once, embroiled within emotions unsettling yet liberating. The future felt uncertain yet promising, a chance for genuine growth on all sides. Here stood Barron Trump, not just an emblematic figure shadowed by wealth, but rather an individual awakening fully to reclaim agency over identity through shared stories, ahead awaiting recognition beyond mere labels drawn forth tightly clasped around past connections, defining lives moving forward anew, together uncloaked on a brighter horizons, shimmering ahead along ways previously uncharted, stepping boldly forth together, united, casting aside judgments surrounding them toward liberated lives awaiting, already embraced fully ahead, onward, toward tomorrow transformed utterly anew. The cafeteria was thick with a charged silence after Barron's bold response, a stark contrast to the boisterous laughter that had filled the room just moments before. Students shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing between Barron and Ethan as they processed the unexpected turn of events. That it was as if the air had become electrified. Everyone could feel that something significant was unfolding, a breaking of the expected social order that had ruled their lives for so long. Ethan, momentarily taken aback by Barron's retort, attempted to regain control of the situation. His bravado, however, seemed less certain now. The laughter of his friends waned, replaced by a growing unease as they sensed the shift in the tide of their social hierarchy. They were accustomed to Ethan's dominance in these arenas, where insults flew and power struggles played out like a well-rehearsed performance. But now, the audience was beginning to question their allegiance. "What's the matter, Barron? Did I hit a nerve?" Ethan shot back, trying to mask his faltering confidence with a veneer of toughness. His voice was louder than necessary, an attempt to drown out the murmurs that were growing among their peers. "I mean, it's not like you have anything better going for you." The audience's reaction was telling. While some still chuckled lightly at Ethan's jab, others frowned, recognizing the deeper implications of his words. That Barron's friends exchanged knowing glances, hearts racing as they silently rooted for him. This was a pivotal moment, a chance to redefine not only Barron's identity, but also their own relationships within their tightly knit group. "Actually, I do," Barron replied, his voice steady and firm, drawing attention back to himself. The clarity of his conviction rang strong. It resonated with students who had long admired him from afar, but never had the courage to voice their support. "I'm done letting you define who I am based on my family name." As the tension thickened in the cafeteria, whispers spread like wildfire. Some students leaned closer, eager to hear more. Others shifted awkwardly in their seats, unsure which side to take. Chloe, a friend known for her fierce loyalty, had been watching intently from her table. She couldn't hold back any longer and decided to add her voice to the mix. "You know what, Barron? You're right," she exclaimed, standing up from her seat. "We're all so much more than our families or what people say about us. This isn't just about you. It's about all of us." Her words ignited a spark among other students. Heads began nodding in agreement. "Yeah," came a shout from another table. "We're tired of all this nonsense. Let's just be ourselves." The atmosphere shifted again, transforming into something more communal. An unspoken agreement filling the space that encouraged authenticity over superficiality. Students began to rally behind Barron, throwing off the invisible chains of expectations that had bound them for so long. Ethan's face twisted in frustration as he glanced around his friends who seemed to be wavering in their support. The laughter that once bolstered his ego now felt like a distant echo. He leaned back slightly, crossing his arms defensively, but it was clear he was losing ground. "Whatever," he finally muttered, but his tone lacked conviction. "You're still just a nobody without your dad's name." Yet even as he spat those words out, the strength behind them felt diminished. The crowd had turned against him. Barron's courage had ignited something within them, prompting many to reassess their own identities beyond societal labels. For Barron, the swirling doubts that had accompanied him earlier began to dissipate amidst this newfound solidarity. He stood taller, feeling lighter and more empowered by the support echoing around him. That it was not just about this confrontation. It was a shared rebellion against judgment and expectation. "Words can hurt," he said loudly enough for all to hear, "but they don't have to define us. We can choose who we want to be." The applause that followed was spontaneous and genuine, a reaction that surprised even Barron. It felt like an awakening shared among peers who had long been trapped in a cycle of rivalry and superficial judgments. In this moment, they were no longer just students at an elite school. They were individuals claiming their right to exist on their own terms. Ethan stood there in silent disbelief as waves of support for Barron washed over him, his previously solid position on top of the social ladder. Now unraveling like a poorly woven tapestry, he realized he had underestimated not only Barron, but also the collective strength that lay dormant among their peers. An alliance forged from shared experiences and emotions now rising against him. As laughter and cheers filled the cafeteria for Barron's courageous stand against mockery and scorn, it became clear this moment would resonate far beyond lunchtime chatter. It was a catalyst for change that would ripple through hallways and classrooms. Alike, the power dynamics in the cafeteria had irrevocably shifted. Those who once felt they were merely players in Ethan's game began to embrace their own narratives. Empowered by Barron's bravery and Chloe's encouragement, students started to engage in conversations about identity and self-worth. Topics often avoided, but now bubbling to the surface, and as Barron absorbed this newfound energy surrounding him, a mixture of camaraderie and shared understanding, he realized that he was no longer just Donald Trump's son, that he was carving a path toward becoming his own person amidst a world built on expectations and judgments, ready to embrace whatever came next with confidence and authenticity, leading the way forward together united. As the applause and cheers echoed around him, Barron stood at the center of the cafeteria, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The exhilaration of having asserted himself and garnered support from his peers felt intoxicating, yet an undercurrent of regret began to creep in. The laughter from moments ago seemed to fade as he replayed the confrontation in his mind, questioning whether he had taken things too in the midst of the exhilaration. A pang of guilt washed over him when he saw Ethan's expression shift from arrogance to shock, then to something resembling hurt. The bravado that Ethan had wielded like a weapon now appeared fragile, crumbling under the weight of Barron's words and the unexpected loss of social power. Barron understood all too well how painful it could be to feel humiliated in front of others, a sentiment he had experienced countless times throughout his life. As he absorbed the scene unfolding around him, Barron couldn't shake off the thought that perhaps he had gone too far. The vibrant atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken tension. Students celebrated his courage, but there was also a disquieting realization that they were witnessing something darker, a fracture in their social fabric that would have repercussions. What if I just made things worse? He thought as his heart raced with uncertainty, as empowering as it felt to speak out against Ethan. Barron couldn't ignore the potential fallout, the backlash that might arise not just for Ethan, but for himself as well. There were whispers among the crowd, some praising him while others debated whether he had crossed a line. In that moment, Barron's previous optimism started to wane. He recalled times when he had been on the receiving end of cutting remarks and how they lingered long after they were spoken. Would Ethan remember this day as a defining moment of humiliation? And would it change how others viewed him? Perhaps standing up for himself meant becoming an object of scorn or rivalry moving forward. He caught Chloe's eye across the crowd. She smiled encouragingly, but even her enthusiasm felt muted now against the backdrop of his worries. What was once camaraderie felt shrouded in complexity. This wasn't just about him. It was about everyone navigating their roles within this microcosmic society. Would they all rally back together tomorrow? Or would divisions deepen between those who supported him and those who favored Ethan? Barron felt a wave of shame swell within him. It was difficult to reconcile triumph over adversity with compassion for someone who had been cornered by the very system they all existed within. That social order was never just black and white. It was filled with shades of gray, where friendships intertwined and loyalties were tested daily. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything at all, he muttered quietly to himself as applause faded into murmurs surrounding him. The very idea that standing up could lead to such heavy consequences weighed heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't sure if this was what true empowerment looked like. The chaotic energy shifted back into whispers circulating around him. Some students discussed how brave it was for Barron to confront Ethan, Others wondered aloud if such bravery had consequences they hadn't considered yet, all while still casting wary glances toward Ethan's table where discomfort reigned supreme. Ethan, having retreated to his friends, wore an expression that mirrored Barron's own internal conflict. A mixture of anger and vulnerability painted across his features. Though Ethan may have hurled insults without thought before, facing Barron's defiance stripped away the barriers normally constructed against vulnerability in their elite circle. When Barron locked eyes with Ethan briefly again, an unexpected surge of empathy emerged within him, that he remembered how easily hatred could fester when faced with public humiliation, how it could twist perceptions and forge animosities that lingered long after words were exchanged. "Maybe I went about it wrong," Barron whispered under his breath as he observed the shifting dynamics around him. The urge to take back some words hung unspoken between them both, like an invisible thread connecting them amid the chaos spilling forth among their peers. As students continued debating reactions and alliances forming anew within this social structure, ever-evolving dynamically amidst young lives navigating complexities layered intricately beneath polished facades, Barron realized standing up didn't always mean tearing others down. Instead, perhaps it could mean uplifting voices lost beneath noise altogether. Just as quickly as realization dawned upon him amidst swirling questions, encircling thoughts, cluttering emotions deep inside, growing uneasy, the bell rang loudly, cutting through confusion thickly hanging above them, all signaling time ticking onward toward classes beginning again. Soon enough, leaving behind remnants lingering throughout hallways, forcing new conversations ahead, burgeoning, waiting patiently, needing exploration, evermore searching authenticity, arriving freshly ready, embraced fully ahead, together onward toward brighter paths, illuminating futures uncharted together, united, embarking toward tomorrow renewed, unbound entirely. Anew, as the class began and students settled into their seats, Barron found himself reflecting on the events of the day. The exhilaration from standing up to Ethan still lingered, but it was now accompanied by a heavy weight of introspection. He glanced around the classroom, taking in the familiar faces of his peers, each one harboring their own stories, struggles, and backgrounds that in this moment, he couldn't help but contemplate the privilege that colored their interactions and defined their identities. St. Andrew's School was not just a place of learning. It was a microcosm of society where wealth and status dictated social hierarchies. Barron had often felt the pressures of this environment, where being part of the Trump family brought both admiration and scrutiny. He understood that his last name opened doors for him, but also created barriers, walls that separated him from genuine connections. That today's confrontation had peeled back some layers to reveal how deeply privilege affected everyone involved, including Ethan. Ethan's mocking comments about Barron's father had struck a nerve, but they were symptomatic of something larger, a culture where bullying thrived on perceptions built through entitlement. Barron realized that while he stood up for himself, he had unwittingly participated in a system that often pitted students against one another in a fight for social dominance. He thought about how privilege could blind individuals to the struggles of others. Ethan's laughter masked his own insecurities and perhaps stemmed from his need to assert control. In a world where self-worth was often measured by wealth and reputation, vulnerability became an invitation for ridicule rather than empathy. While Barron felt justified in defending himself, he recognized that he had also contributed to Ethan's humiliation, a reminder that strength could sometimes come at the expense of another's dignity. Was it truly an act of empowerment if it meant tearing someone else down? This internal conflict troubled him deeply as he continued to process the situation. He wanted to be seen as a person rather than merely as a reflection of his family's status. Yet here, he was navigating uncharted waters filled with competing identities shaped by privilege. In class, discussions flowed easily as students shared thoughts on recent assignments and upcoming events. Yet beneath this facade lay simmering tensions fueled by unspoken rivalries and alliances shifting like sand beneath their feet. Barron caught snippets of conversations around him, his classmates discussing how proud they were of him for standing up to Ethan, while others expressed apprehension about how such confrontations might affect their social circles moving forward. Chloe turned to Barron during a lull in conversation. Her eyes sparkled with sincerity as she leaned in closer. "You inspired so many people today," she said softly, her tone warm yet serious. "But I know it wasn't easy for you." Her words resonated deeply within him. They acknowledged both his courage and the complexities attached to it. "Thanks," Barron replied, trying to mask his lingering doubts with a smile. "But I can't help feeling like I might have caused more harm than good." Chloe nodded understandingly while glancing around the room, filled with chatter and laughter before returning her gaze to him. "It's hard. We all have our battles, shaped by what we face every day." She paused before adding thoughtfully, "But confronting those pressures is what makes us stronger." Her perceptiveness struck a chord within Barron. Perhaps navigating these complexities wasn't just about winning or losing in social dynamics, but about creating spaces where authenticity could thrive alongside vulnerability. He thought about how crucial it was for individuals with privilege to acknowledge their positions without letting them define their worth, or others' experiences within those frameworks. That afternoon led Barron into deeper reflections on privilege. The realization that it could serve as both a shield and a shackle, depending on one's perspective, was essential not only for him, but for all students at St. Andrew's School to recognize how power dynamics played out among them daily. They needed to consider how they treated each other beyond mere labels tied tightly around wealth or reputation, while allowing space for open dialogue surrounding privilege. Vulnerability could emerge as an integral part of their culture, a collective embracing of authenticity nurtured through shared experiences rather than competitive displays, seeking validation solely based on status alone. AS class drew closer to its end. Barron felt invigorated by these insights blooming within him like fresh buds emerging from winter dormancy, each thought promising growth ahead, ushering forth paths newly illuminated brighter onward together toward futures waiting patiently beyond current encounters, ready embraced fully toward deeper connections, celebrating newfound perspectives, navigating uncharted territories, exploring authenticity, releasing burdens previously held tightly bound, brighter horizons beckoning, inviting exploration towards understanding shared amid youth. Collectively hopeful, standing together with each passing day at St. Andrew's School revealing ever more intricate layers woven throughout lives intertwined, rich, meaning awaited discovery. The potential existed amid beautiful chaos, unfolding vibrantly, encouraging growth, forging bonds, inviting understanding, illuminating futures enriched through shared dialogues, aspiring towards something greater altogether, nurtured friendships, blossoming authentically, united onward, embracing possibilities anew. In the days following Barron's confrontation with Ethan, the atmosphere at St. Andrew's School shifted noticeably. The ripple effects of that lunch encounter echoed through the hallways and classrooms, leaving a lasting impression on both the students and faculty alike. What had begun as a moment of personal triumph for Barron quickly morphed into a complex web of consequences that intertwined with their social fabric. As students resumed their routines, whispers filled the corridors. Conversations that once revolved around mundane topics shifted toward discussions about identity, privilege, and the ethics of social interactions. Some peers lauded Barron's courage for standing up to Ethan, while others expressed concern about how he had done it. Whether it was really right to humiliate someone in return for humiliation received. Ethan, meanwhile, appeared more subdued than usual, that he no longer walked the halls with the same fearless swagger that had characterized his dominance. Instead, he often seemed like a shadow of himself, lost in introspection. Although he had tried to maintain an air of confidence in front of his friends, the palpable shift in the dynamics of their group was becoming harder to ignore. Rumors circulated about potential conflicts brewing among Ethan's supporters who had once rallied behind him without question. Now, they were forced to reassess their loyalties, some even quietly supporting Barron's stance, while others remained ensnared in fear of crossing Ethan's class. The tension played out in subtle glances, and hushed conversations. Teachers noticed this shift as well. They could feel a change in how students interacted with one another, an almost tangible hesitance hanging in the air, particularly when topics related to social status arose. The discussions that arose during lessons began to take on deeper meanings as students opened up about their own experiences of bullying and intimidation within a system dictated by wealth and perception. One afternoon in history class, Mr. Dawson decided to initiate a conversation about power dynamics throughout history, a relevant topic given the circumstances surrounding recent events at school. He guided discussions around societal influence and its effects on relationships. Barron found himself both engaged and uneasy. While he wanted to contribute his thoughts, he wrestled with the fear that any opinion he voiced might lead back to the very confrontation that had caused such upheaval. Power often breeds conflict, Mr. Dawson said, thoughtfully looking around at his students. It can elevate individuals but also isolate them if misused. Barron felt those words resonate deeply within him, illuminating his internal conflict further. Was his moment of defiance truly an act of empowerment, or could it be seen as an abuse of privilege in its own right? After class, Chloe approached Barron with a concerned expression. "I've noticed some people are talking differently about you, like you're some kind of hero for defending yourself," she said softly. "But I think we need to consider how this might affect our group as a whole." "You mean Ethan?" Barron replied, glancing toward where Ethan typically sat, now surrounded by fewer friends than before. "It's hard to speak out sometimes," Chloe acknowledged. "He was definitely wrong for what he said, but confronting someone like that changes everything. Relationships become complicated." Her insights prompted Barron to realize that standing up for oneself often comes at the risk of fracturing relationships, something he didn't fully comprehend during the heat of the moment. Throughout that week, Barron encountered numerous conversations among students, including those who once aligned themselves closely with Ethan, discussing vulnerability and strength as they navigated their own insecurities. The cafeteria buzzed not just with gossip, but with ideas about empathy and understanding. Amid privilege-filled banter, likely aimed at self-preservation more than logic. Pondering these dynamics led Barron deeper into reflection about what genuine friendship entailed within such an elite ecosystem. He recognized that confronting others' behaviors didn't yield straightforward resolutions wrapped nicely in boxes. Instead, these experiences unearthed complexities surrounding empathy amidst personal struggles woven throughout their youth. The awkwardness lingered but also paved pathways. Forward.AS days turned into weeks. The lasting consequences of that lunch encounter continued to unfold within St. Andrew's School. Students began forming unofficial discussion groups focused on issues concerning privilege and belonging. They explored concepts surrounding respect, mutual understanding layered intricately alongside awareness, recognizing differences without marginalizing anyone based solely on perception or past actions. Barron found himself participating more actively in these dialogues, sharing thoughts previously swallowed due to fear of reprisal, while acknowledging his own contradictions, growing aware everyone deserved compassion equalized within shared narratives amid private hardships, remaining unspoken too long left festering unresolved absent unity, forged upon understanding instead dominance, ruling breaches tirelessly, preserving authenticity, ahead newly cultivated unveiling perspectives, aching inviting change. Warmly welcomed in hearts, undeterred, irrespective. Past relationships overshadowed by such missteps, exploring youth angst, lingering bright toward brighter collective futures, promising growth emerged, thickly blossoming, flourishing vibrantly, unbounded, ultimately together, fostering harmony, recently discovered forging connections, leading onward, illuminating horizons anew. In the days following Barron's confrontation with Ethan, the ripple effects of that lunch encounter reached beyond the school's hallways and classrooms, touching home life as well. Barron sat in his room. The weight of it all pressed down on him. He knew that he would eventually have to confront his parents about what had transpired, a conversation he both dreaded and anticipated. At tea dinner that night, the atmosphere was deceptively calm. The Trump family gathered around a long table laden with an array of gourmet dishes. His father spoke animatedly about recent business ventures, while his mother infused her warmth into the conversation, providing a comforting backdrop against an otherwise tumultuous day for Barron. Yet beneath the surface, Barron felt a tension building, and he was aware that he needed to address the incident with Ethan. But how could he begin? Would his parents even understand the complexities of adolescent dynamics? Taking a deep breath, he finally summoned the courage to speak up. "Dad, Mom, there's something I need to talk about." His voice trailed off as both parents turned toward him, their expressions shifting from casual interest to concern. "What is it, Barron?" his mother asked gently, sensing the heaviness in his tone. "I had a situation at school with Ethan." He hesitated as memories flooded back. The laughter, the confrontation, and the subsequent feelings of regret. "He made some comments about you." Donald Trump's expression hardened slightly at the mention of an insult directed at him. "What did he say?" he asked sharply. Barron weighed his words carefully. He didn't want to amplify the situation or encourage further conflict. "I stood up for myself when he was being rude," Barron explained. "But afterward, I felt it seems like it changed everything at school. People are divided over it." "What do you mean?" Donald pressed, leaning forward slightly. "There are students who think I'm a hero for standing up to him. But then some are worried about what it means for our friendships," Barron admitted, feeling vulnerable under his father's scrutiny. "I don't want things to get worse or create more problems." His mother reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "It's important to stand up for yourself, Barron," she said softly. "But yes, there are consequences to every action." She looked thoughtful for a moment before continuing. "Have you considered how this might affect Ethan?" Barron looked down at his plate, grappling with her question. "I know he might be hurting too, but he was mean first," he replied defensively. "That doesn't excuse behavior." Donald interjected matter-of-factly. "But understanding each other's positions can lead to resolution or growth." His father's words echoed within him as Barron recalled his own struggles with privilege and identity. How easy it was to get lost in the social games they played without considering their emotional impact. Maintaining relationships is just as important as standing up for yourself, Ivanka added thoughtfully from her seat across the table. In your world, navigating those relationships can take skill. Just remember that empathy counts too. The conversation shifted into a more profound discussion about power dynamics, how they played out not only among classmates, but also in broader societal contexts. Barron listened intently as they discussed how privilege could blind individuals to other struggles, while also offering them opportunities that others might not have. It be why the evening's end. Barron felt lighter, yet more enlightened than before. Engaging in this dialogue with his parents had unveiled layers of understanding regarding vulnerability and strength. It wasn't just about confronting bullies, but also considering how to approach relationships moving forward without neglecting compassion or awareness. As school resumed the next day, Barron took those lessons with him, that he noticed shifts in how students interacted. Conversations were crisper, yet laced with hesitance, as if everyone was still processing what had happened at lunch. Students approached one another with newfound caution while exploring conversations about respect and understanding rather than mere alliances predicated solely on dominance. In history class later that week, Mr. Dawson opened up discussions around empathy intertwined with social dynamics, encouraging students to share personal experiences that highlighted their understanding of privilege. Barron felt invigorated by these candid exchanges. Students began reflecting on challenges faced not only from their peers, but also within themselves, realizing that character mattered more than wealth alone. Inspired by these reflections and his own experiences during dinner conversations with his parents, Barron found himself volunteering more frequently in discussions, drawing connections between vulnerability and empowerment while fostering an environment of support among classmates navigating similar trials. Through these shared dialogues on privilege and social standing echoing in classrooms at St. Andrew's School, Barron began cultivating deeper connections, not just asserting his identity, but acknowledging others' journeys alongside his own, leading toward lasting friendships built upon mutual respect and empathy nourished amidst newly discovered awareness, enriching their lives, brightening futures ahead. As the weeks unfolded, Barron found himself deeply immersed in introspection, reflecting on the lessons learned from his confrontation with Ethan and the subsequent dialogues that rippled throughout St. Andrew's School. The incident had not only transformed his perspective on social interactions, but had also illuminated various facets of his identity that he had not previously considered. One morning, while walking through the school's picturesque grounds, Barron stopped to observe a group of students engaged in animated conversation. They were discussing an upcoming charity event aimed at supporting local communities, and he felt a sense of pride swell within him. This was not merely a social gathering. It was an opportunity for students to unite for a common cause, something that transcended their usual rivalries. Barron began to realize how easy it had been to get caught up in the competitive spirit that defined much of their school life. The need to assert dominance often overshadowed moments where collaboration and empathy could thrive. This reflection led him to understand that true strength lay not in tearing others down, but rather in uplifting one another and working together towards shared goals. Inspired by this insight, he decided to get involved with the charity event, viewing it as a way to contribute positively to their community while fostering connections with his peers beyond the confines of privilege. Barron participated in planning meetings. He witnessed firsthand the power of collaboration. Students from different social circles came together, setting aside their differences to work toward a common goal that he watched individuals who might have previously aligned themselves with. Either Ethan or him engage in constructive dialogue, brainstorming ideas and offering support while letting go of past grievances. It was heartening to see them united by a purpose greater than themselves. Amid these interactions, Barron also began to open up more about his own feelings regarding privilege and identity. He shared stories during meetings about how difficult it was growing up under the shadow of his father's legacy, expressing that being part of such an esteemed family brought its own set of challenges, ones often overlooked by those outside their circle. His vulnerability resonated among his classmates, prompting many to share their experiences as well, how they too felt pressured by societal norms or expectations tied to wealth. This openness fostered an environment where students began to recognize each other's struggles more readily. Conversations transitioned from surface-level pleasantries to deeper discussions about personal identities shaped by family backgrounds and societal pressures. A journey toward greater understanding blossoming amid shared vulnerabilities. As the charity event approached, Barron collaborated closely with Chloe, who had remained a steadfast friend through these turbulent times. Her unwavering support encouraged him to embrace his role in advocating for mutual respect among peers, not just through words, but through actions demonstrating empathy as they navigated the complexities surrounding privilege together. The day of the event arrived, bustling with energy as students set up booths and organized activities dedicated to raising awareness and funds for various local charities. Barron felt a profound sense of fulfillment as he moved about, engaging with classmates from different social circles and fostering connections where competition once reigned supreme. In this vibrant atmosphere filled with laughter and purpose, Barron found himself reflecting on how far he had come since that pivotal lunch encounter. He remembered the turmoil he felt afterward, the fear of repercussions combined with regret regarding Ethan's humiliation, and now saw those moments reshaped into stepping stones toward growth. That he realized that while confrontation could spark change, it was compassion and collective action that truly crafted lasting impact within their social dynamics. Standing up for oneself didn't have to equate to conflict. Rather, it could be an invitation for dialogue, an opportunity for understanding. As the day progressed, students poured their hearts into making the event a success. With every donation collected and every connection made among peers, Barron witnessed firsthand how they were forging a new narrative for their school, one rooted in empathy rather than entitlement. That be why the end of the event, as he watched people engaging joyfully while contributing collectively towards something meaningful, Barron felt a surge of hope wash over him. Here was evidence that despite their differences, the wealth or status that often divided them. A shared commitment to kindness could transcend those barriers. Returning home that evening after an exhilarating day, filled with camaraderie and purpose, Barron reflected upon the broader implications of everything he had experienced, from standing up against bullying to advocating for empathy through collaborative efforts. With renewed determination blossoming within him, coupled with clarity regarding his identity beyond family legacy, a path forged through understanding emerged, steadily brightening futures ahead, inviting exploration alongside authenticity, enriching lives nourished at every turn. This transformative journey reaffirmed that genuine connection and mutual respect could reshuffle hierarchies built on privilege, ushering forth a new paradigm, illuminating potential eager, awaiting discovery, together onward, embracing brighter horizons filled vibrantly with hope.